Okay, cool. So welcome to the first episode of Mendo Metal Podcast, focusing on the metal and punk scene of Mendocino County, California, the people involved, the bands, concerts, and how things have come to be, as well as the history behind it all. My name is Austin Spence, the vocalist and bassist for Embryonic Devourment, along with my friends and co-hosts, Adam Weber of Embryonic Devourment and Infex. We got Bryon Stiky-tips, an event organizer of our local scene and artist, videographer, key player in the Mendocino County metal and punk scene here. And we also have Luke Boutiette with us of Embryonic Devourment. How are we all doing today?
Good, man. Good.
Fuck yeah. So, I guess with this first episode, I just kind of wanted to get us together to talk about the, how this all came to be, so to speak, and the history going back as far as you can go, Adam. I think you're probably the one that has a bit more knowledge and history of living in this area and what bands were around during the 80s and 90s. So I guess take it away. How did you even get into metal? Just start us as early back as you can, man.
I got into metal kind of by like going through my mom's records, and I found an album called Heart. It was an album by a band called Heart, and the first song was Barracuda, and that was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard, that I could realize. And from then I was like playing the broom and the tennis racket for guitar, listening to that song only, and then I slowly got into stuff like AC/DC and progressed, when all the faster and harder stuff that I heard, I just kind of gravitated that way. As far as bands were concerned, I didn't really know too much about that in the local scene until actually I met Luke's brother, Matt, who played, I think, in a band called Triax, and they were I can't remember if they were thrash or just metal, but they were cool.
Wow.
And they all had long hair and spikes and leather jackets, and I was just like, whoa, okay, well, I'm gonna play and I'm gonna do this. And my dad played too, but they played, kind of 60s rock. So, but probably Matt and Marco White were probably the first time I realized that, that local players were shredders.
Yeah. Wow. That's taking it back, man. I mean, yeah. Triax. So what, let's see, what year was that, you think?
86. Luke, do you have any idea?
Wow.
Of that?
Jesus.
One of my earliest memories, I thought I was like 3 or 4. I might have been a little older, but I thought it was when he was in that band Triax.
Yeah.
And they did a show up in like Humboldt County somewhere, and my parents like brought me to go see, and so it was one of my earliest memories of like people headbanging and moshing when I was quite young. Of course, they let me wear earplugs.
Right.
Wow.
But there was my brother playing in front of all these people. That was pretty cool. And yeah. I mean, before that, he was playing with Marco. I definitely remember that. My brother and Marco have been playing together since I was born, probably, and they were doing rock and metal. And
yeah. I remember he played in a band from Humboldt County called Cold Steel, also. But I don't know.
I still know that dude.
Oh, cool. Right.
Yeah, he still plays music. It's not really metal anymore, but
yeah, they played a thing called Thrash in the Grass.
I've heard a bunch about that, and I feel like unfortunate that I didn't get to see that back in the day, because people talk about that show like it's so legendary.
Yeah, totally. Tell us about that, Adam. What was that about?
It kind of was for the area, and they had it up in Arcata at the Redwood, at that place that you had the
Mateel.
Mateel, that's right.
Yeah.
So the first one they had Forbidden before they were signed.
Wow.
And the second one they had Death Angel. So actually, Bryon, when you had Death Angel back, it was kind of like a reunion of sorts.
Yeah.
And both of those shows were pretty monumental.
Wow.
The second one is when Cold Steel played.
Nice.
Amongst a bunch of other locals and Bay Area type bands.
Was that in the 80s as well, or was that more heading into the 90s? Or
that was late.
That was like mid 80s.
Late.
Wow.
80s. I had just gotten back.
Didn't Verbal Abuse come up and play that too, or something like that?
I don't remember that, but they may have.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was probably, late 80s, early 90s is when all that was happening, like 90 and 91 tops.
And you've been around a long time, Adam.
I remember there was I remember there was another band from around that time. I think Marco White was in it as well. It was called Ruckus.
Ruckus. That's a little later, but
okay.
Yeah.
That's actually Marco's brother.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they were probably 90, 95, 94, 94, 95.
Okay. Wow.
They were pretty good. And Steve was his name. And they're both singers.
So in comparison, age-wise, when Matt Boutiette and Marco White were doing triacs, what age were you about during this time? When did you first hear about all that?
Probably 16.
Okay.
Yeah, 14, between 14 and 16.
Wow. Okay. So you were about, getting into the harder stuff at that time then, obviously.
Barely. I was always, I'd heard bands like Accept and they were fast for that time, and Judas Priest and stuff like that. And then it wasn't until I started getting in trouble when I heard Metallica and Slayer and all the really fast stuff, the dawn of thrash metal, I guess, as it were.
Is that when you started playing guitar, you think, or?
I was playing a little bit before that, but I didn't get serious till I moved back around the probably the Thrash on the Grasses and stuff like that was when I was like, whoa, okay, this is what I want to play.
Yeah.
I want to do. And I'd heard Schizo and stuff like that and seen them play down a couple times in Willits, but I wasn't good enough at that time. So
it's interesting, like when I listened to Adam talking about like his journey from like kind of starting with Heart and progressing to metal, like I had like a very similar experience myself, like in the sense that when in the early 80s, 82, 83, 84, I was the same as all the other kids listening to Michael Jackson, Thriller, and Huey Lewis and all that stuff. I mean, that's what you did in 5th and 6th grade, and I came from like a musical family in the sense that my mom's husband at the time played in a Bay Area like classic rock cover band, so
wow.
I kind of grew up around the whole bands playing and speaker cabinets and practices on Saturday nights at Jay's house, all that. I grew up kind of around all of that. So I grew up on classic rock, listening to things like Boston and, Tom Petty,
Nice.
Fleetwood Mac, all that stuff. That's like where I started. And when I got into like high school, maybe 8th, 9th grade, that summer there, somewhere along the way, I discovered my next door neighbor had moved in, and it was the first time I had ever heard of AC/DC. As lame as it sounds, I was such a late bloomer, but he played, what was it? AC/DC, Big Balls. And he called me next door and he said, check out this song. Right. And we were sitting in his backyard. He had one of those little like school tape recorders, and he put on Big Balls. And like, I listened to that song and I was like, dude, that was cool. And then we listened to like the rest of this cassette and I was like, I didn't even know who AC/DC was. And all of a sudden I was like, this is awesome music. And then, from there, I kind of got into like, harder rock more so than metal. I still hadn't heard of Metallica or Slayer or Overkill or any of those bands. I hadn't even heard of them. I was just barely getting into AC/DC. And a friend of mine, Joel, he actually kind of turned me on to like metal, as close to metal as it was at the time. He showed me the first Suicidal Tendencies album. And It started off, with the first song on the album is just like crazy screaming guitars and laughing and all this craziness. And like immediately I was like, dude, this I have arrived.
That was the one for me too.
Yeah,
man.
I started on Suicidal Tendencies, and then like I listened to that tape until it broke, and then like I had to listen to other Suicidal Tendencies. Then it was, well, what else is like that? So then it was DRI, and it was like, well, what else is like that? And then I didn't get into like things like Metallica and Slayer till like maybe sophomore year in high school. I mean, I'd heard of them, but I never really listened to them. And then wasn't even introduced to Metallica with Kill 'Em All. Like the first album I heard of actually listened to of Metallica was like Master of Puppets, and like way like 10 years after it came out, so I was a late bloomer, but once I got on that, it was like gotta find more. You gotta find more.
No stopping at that point. Yeah.
There's like this weird thing that happens. It's like, no matter how intense the music gets, you always need something more aggressive. You need something more intense. You're never satisfied with how hard it is or how brutal it is. You want the next level. So then we end up with, bands like Embryonic Devourment and Infects and, bands like that, where like, those influences come together and you're like, this is like as brutal as you can fucking get. You know what I mean? But I've had a very similar journey to Adam in coming from, listening to this to where we're at now. And
I think that's one of the cool things about, starting on, the early stuff like AC/DC and stuff like that. Led Zeppelin is, we kind of got a chance to move through that cycle at a natural pace, whereas, you have some kids today that are, the first thing I heard was, Cannibal Corpse, and they're already like next thing you know, they're just like playing laser metal. The next thing you know, you're like, what the fuck is happening? So I mean, it's cool that I think it's. I mean, either way, no matter which way you find it or you get there, that's totally cool. But I definitely had that early kind of experience with my dad too, with all his rock stuff. But
yeah, I mean, it seems like we're all kind of very involved in music in one point or another. With Luke and his brother, obviously that influenced Luke greatly, and they.
That's got to be some of the. I mean, one of the first, more extreme bands from up in this area, right?
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think there was what was Ron Keltner doing at that time? He
was playing in a band called Dominator.
That's what it was. Dominator.
I actually stole him from that band.
Okay.
To play in the early form of Dirge. It was called Demise, which was kind of funny because you had a Demise too, and I'd always kind of thought, well, that's kind of weird, but the musical connection.
We arrived at the same point somehow.
And we probably had the bands at similar times. So we were just basically a bunch of kids. It was me and Craig Halsey and Ron and a guy from Fort Bragg, and we were just kind of partying and smoking weed and drinking and playing like 3 songs that we had written and never getting out of the garage kind of thing. And then later on Dirge happened, which was kind of the first real death metal band from this area. And
nice. We were from the Willits area, right?
Yeah, we were pretty terrible, but it was fun. We nothing else was happening. So,
hey man, as long as it was loud and fast, I mean,
it was.
What year was that?
92 to 95, I think, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. I wasn't even around here then. I mean, my parents lived up here, but I lived in New Mexico at that time. So I missed a lot of that, early 90s and like the beginnings of a lot of the bands that are here now. Like I missed a lot of those, beginnings and stuff. But
me too, man. I'm kind of a transplant from LA myself. So I mean, really, that's why I'm happy, we got you on here, Adam, to kind of fill us in on that.
I feel like you and I had basically just barely missed each other out. I mean, you were pretty young when you moved up here, but I think I had moved out of the area and you kind of like moved in.
Right.
And started Cerebus or Yield Scabbard. I'm not sure which one was first, but You
Well,
guys,
I mean, with Dirge though, I mean, where were you guys playing up here during that time? I mean, how did you explain, to these people that you wanted to do a show and expect them to take you seriously?
it's kind of funny. I mean, we had just like played a party or something like that, and then
Nice.
let's make a show, and we tried to book at John's place or tried to do all this, and we just figured out that we got to do it a different way, and we realized that that the Grange Hall was $25 an hour back then. So we'd pool our money together and rent it for 4 or 5 hours and throw a show. And we had Tucker's band, Tube-Stick Jones, and The Process, and a few other bands. Like we try to bring bands from the Bay. And
that's right. Yeah, The Process was from up here. I remember that. They were a really kick-ass hardcore punk rock band, if I remember right.
So it was kind of strange how these multi-genre bands would come and fill this place up. And I mean, there'd be like 200 people in the Grange Hall, and I know you've been there. That's
sizable for sure.
It's roughly the size of the Phoenix Theater in Petaluma. I mean,
yeah, it's actually a cool place to do shows. I mean,
yeah,
it's a little expensive now, but
yeah, $25 an hour, man, can't beat that.
Yeah, it's a little more than that now.
Back in the 90s, that was a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we would book it and have people pay $5 a head, and we'd everybody get paid. Everybody was cool. They wouldn't break stuff. We'd be able to clean up, and it was always a good thing. And we'd have to leave at 10 o'clock, which was actually good for all the kids too. So
what I imagine though is the difference between now and then is back then a lot of this was still new and it was still kind of budding and it was very interesting. And so, just like anything, when it's new, a lot of people flock to it, and and that was a good thing then. I think a lot of the issue that we have now with like pulling these same kind of crowds at events is that there's so much of it. There's so many different types of metal and metal bands that it's actually hard to gather 200 people in a room these days. Not that people don't appreciate music, but when you've got, 10 different shows with all 10 different metal bands all going on the same night, those 200 people are dispersed. So it's actually really hard now to pull a big room like that. So just to think of like that I missed a lot of that back in the day of those big crowds. And like I said, the beginnings of all this must have been really exciting, to be there and see all of that,
Yeah. And I mean, especially, just, for some people who maybe aren't from this area or just tuning into this, but, to get that kind of crowd to a show, in a place like this where we live, I mean, we live in the woods.
Yeah, there's only 200 people. There's only 200 people here, So.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's like a town effort when that happens, so that's a big deal, so I mean, I would say Dirge is definitely successful for its time, man.
I think we only played a handful of shows, probably 5 tops, but
okay.
Nice. Each time it seemed like there was different, there's different bands that would come in from the city or we'd try to keep the, a few different styles of music because it actually attracted more people. And, we never made a demo tape or anything like that, but, we were savage, sloppy death metal and people would mosh pit to it. And we thought,
nice,
that was bad,
I love it.
And it was the same thing with like Tube-Stick Jones and The Process, of course, too. I mean, it was certainly fun.
Yeah. Tube-Stick Jones used to be, fairly more hardcore back in the day. Am I right?
They were metal. I mean, they were pretty thrashy, kind of like DRI meets Slayer and Metallica.
Nice.
Damn.
Nice.
In some ways. I mean, it's, and they had their own unique flavor, of course, because it is Tucker and, he's got a certain style that he plays. That's pretty, it's pretty unique. So it was fun. was fun.
Nice. Did you guys ever play any shows out on the coast, like Fort Bragg area? Was anything popping out there at that time, or?
We did.
Really?
We played one thing. We were supposed to. There was a beach show or something, and it got shut down. So we just ended up going to. It was actually the. What's the band out there?
Chained Existence or?
No.
Shredded Metal.
Shredded Metal. It was actually the drummer's house of Shredded.
Okay.
Yeah, we went out there and it was before Shredded, and we jammed at his house. It wasn't too many people, but it was still fun.
Hell yeah!
I think that was probably one of the last things we did.
Wow, that's killer. So Shredded Metal's been doing their thing for a while too, right? Or at least as the musicians.
All those guys were old school Fort Bragg heads, and they had different variants of Shredded Metal. I think I can't remember any of the band's names, but they've been around for just as long, kind of doing their thing too. So
Shredded Metal kind of started off, I guess, kind of skate punk dudes that kind of got into like heavier metal, and they're like real theatrical, and like if you took a Rob Zombie movie and like a Grindhouse Tarantino movie and stuck it together in an album, like that's Shredded Metal with a little guar on it.
That's a good explanation.
Yeah, they're a really cool band, man. Like it's interesting that something like that would come from a place like Fort Bragg or like on the coast or like the Redwood trees, where everything's supposed to be serene and beautiful and all that stuff. And then you get like this crazy band that comes out of here and you're like, dude, that's crazy.
And so Luke, what were you doing during this time when I don't know, around the dirge era? Were you starting to kind of delve into stuff, or?
I didn't really start getting like, well, I mean, I was listening to Iron Maiden when I was like 7.
Nice.
Just from my brother, but I don't know. There was probably a bit of a lull during grade school. I didn't start really getting into heavy metal until I started smoking pot when I was like 13. But by that time, I knew what I wanted to do for sure. And so then when I turned 16, I got my first drum set for my birthday.
Wow.
And right away, I knew I wanted to play, heavy metal more than anything else. So
killer.
I played by myself. I didn't do anything until high school band, and they always told me to slow down. But
you'll grow out of this shit. That's what they always told me. And it's like 52. Here I am. Still rocking.
Yeah. But I was, it was into the Metallica albums. I was late to the party for sure, because that stuff was all. But I got in high school, and this dude that was from like Sonoma, he showed me Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse. This was in like '94, and I started to get into that a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, Morbid Angel, man.
It's crazy to even imagine.
Yeah, I kind of when I heard that.
Your audio's cutting out just a little bit, Luke. I don't know if you can do anything about that, but.
Okay.
Sounds better now, though.
Maybe I'll scoot closer.
Cool.
So yeah.
Because I mean, your brother was jamming out during that time as well, right? During the dirge days. I mean, were you guys doing shows together, Adam, or?
No. We always had talked about playing together. It's kind of funny. Like we never quite connected, but we all like listened. We listened to the same music. We'd hang out and and party and listen to Death and Nuclear Assault and all the super heavy stuff. And we all loved all that shit. We just never quite, we never quite got it together. And by the time, in Dirge, I was drumming in that band because there was no drummers. And I think that Matt at the time had moved to the Bay Area and was doing other things. And otherwise, I probably would have been trying to jam with him because I started to get more serious at that point. But we were still young.
Playing.
Yeah, he was still playing.
When he moved back from the Bay, I was starting to play a little bit, and he was in a band still with I think one of the dudes from Triax.
Oh wow!
And this other dude named Paul.
Yeah,
from
Paul.
down south, and they're called the Emerald Triangle. They never quite did anything. They never did an album or nothing like that. But that was one of his last metal projects, probably. But it was pretty good, pretty metal. It was all original. And then since then, he mostly like plays with Marco still. Mm-hmm. Even now, they'll still play from time to time.
He was always a unique style of a drummer as well as you are, Luke. And so, I mean, it's pretty obvious kind of where you guys both had that. I know he taught you some stuff, but you both have that unique flavor to your playing.
Was he giving you lessons, Luke, or?
No, he never gave me lessons, but he was pretty good, and like a lot of stuff came pretty natural to him. He probably had a better sense of rhythm and relaxation than I do. I'm a little more twitchy than him.
Well,
which is good for death metal.
You're in a different generation of music too. He's playing thrash and you're playing tech death. So it's
yeah.
But I know that probably as a child watching him play and growing up seeing him shred it up, you probably picked up on some of the stuff that he was doing.
Yeah, I never imagined like playing a different instrument. That's for sure. It's always going to be the drums.
You come by it honestly.
Well, I'm actually I'm the odd guy out here because I don't play in any bands or anything like that. But like everybody that enjoys metal, I play guitar.
Oh yeah. So but, you play guitar, Bryon. You're a musician just like us, man. And
I don't know that I deserve the title of musician because I don't necessarily make music as so much as noise with a guitar. But I want to.
That's all we do.
You see, the only band that I was ever in. The only band that I was ever in was a band that we called Swollen, and this was like 90, 96, 97. A friend of mine, Ken, and another guy, Chris Cure. He's a guy that played in a cover band here, and I think it was Too Big.
Yeah, I remember.
I've heard of that.
Anyway, long time ago, and they used to play a lot of the bars cover bands. So anyway, me and Chris and Ken, we got together a drunken night after a bunch of Sierra Nevadas and said we're going to play in a band, and so I decided I was playing bass, and Ken was going to sing, and Chris was going to play guitar, and we had nobody that played drums, so this was our band. And we were this 3-piece band with no percussion called Swollen. And basically we just wrote songs about like pirates that pee on people and, not being able to get laid, and just all this like stupid, like basically, drunk married people music, that we could relate to. But anyway, that was, we made it. I think we played a half-assed sort of 3-song set at a backyard party at Ken's house one time where everybody was drunk and didn't listen to us. And that was like our opus. That was our big grand performance. And then after that, it was like, we kind of suck. So we probably shouldn't do this, but yeah, Swollen. Maybe 2022 will be the year, our comeback year.
Cool. I like the name.
Yeah, we'll tour the garages of Talmadge and Ukiah.
You were ahead of your time.
Yeah, definitely.
But
that was like years before we did Ye Olde Scabbard, so you were definitely ahead of the curve with the pirates people.
Well, the difference is here you guys are in bands, and here I am just a guy that talks about.
Well,
bands,
like Luke said, me and Luke can relate to you with that story because we later on had formed a band called Ye Olde Scabbard, which was all about pirates and
nice,
pillaging and all that kind of crap.
Luke, and
it didn't go very far either. So that's another commonality. We might post it one day, though.
I think there's like a cassette tape floating around somewhere in my packed up boxes of stuff that's got like 3 of our what we call demos, on there. I haven't heard it in probably 20 years, but
oh wow,
I'd like to come across it one of these days and listen to it so I can remind myself how horrible we were. But it was good times. Drinking
That's
songs.
cool, man. That's a great story, dude. Hell yeah.
Luke, didn't you have a band called Puke or something to that effect?
That was with Austin. That was
So I think, Adam, after you, because how did Dirge end? What happened? I mean, how did you end up leaving Mendocino and going down to the Bay Area?
Well, we had everybody had lives and wanted to do different things. Everybody was going through stuff, and so it just kind of folded. And I still wanted to play, but I wanted to get back to guitar playing because that was my first love. And so I joined a band from Lakeport called The Word, and they're just traditional heavy metal, but pretty good.
Nice.
Their guitar player and singer was a GIT graduate, so he taught me how to play leads and a little bit about theory and stuff like that. And then from there, I moved to the city and played in various bands in that area. Notably, Oxygen was one.
Yep, I remember that.
And I was pretty stoked on that, but it was short lived too because everybody, it seemed like it was a revolving lineup, and I just kind of got burnt on trying, teaching people over and over, and
for sure, man. Life can get crazy sometimes. It's
yeah.
It's amazing that we're all doing what we're doing to this day. Still staying active and stuff because
still a passion, man.
We all have families, and it's
that's what's cool about being a part of this little group here is that obviously the three of you have contributed to immensely to Mendo Metal, in all different forms. Embryonic Devourment's been around for a long freaking time, all three of you have, Adam, you're playing in Fex now, and Fex has been around for a long time, all these bands that, they're this big part of not just Mendo Metal, but Northern California metal, north of the Bay Area. And here's these three people that I'm sitting here with that have been a huge part of of creating that music and creating that culture,
Thanks, man.
I feel lucky in the sense that I get to present that to people. That's my contribution is I suck. I can't play in a band because I'm not good enough. Probably would never be. And I'm okay with that. I can live vicariously through all these other bands that I can put on stages and put shows together.
Oh yeah. You're the guy that's putting it all on and without you, Bryon, they're just, the shows out here would have just died out there for a while, but you brought it hard.
Well, let me say, I appreciate that very much, but there's a lot more people that have to do with it. You got Jared.
Oh
Spence,
yeah.
You've got, you've got my guy Gavin who helps me out. You've got Brad Hunt, and maybe he might not do metal shows, but he brings a lot of rock shows to the area. There's a lot of people around that create this culture, and it's cool because there's this camaraderie amongst everybody. When you go down to the Bay Area and the city and stuff, and there's a lot of bands that all kind of kiss each other's ass and their buddies and this and that, but the reality is it's so competitive and so fierce, and everybody's clawing over the top of everybody to get somewhere down there. And up here, everybody's just buds, everybody knows everybody. Everybody
Totally.
Plays with everybody. Everybody's been in a band together in some way, shape, or form, and there's a brotherhood of metal up here in Mendocino County, and I appreciate that because it makes my job easy. It makes what I do totally. A lot easier, and I just think it's cool because it's when you're listening to metal in Mendocino County, it doesn't necessarily where that metal's from, but you're sitting in a room with your peers and you're listening to it. Everybody has the same profound appreciation for it. And that just makes the experience that much better when you're just on the same page with everybody that you're sitting with and listening to it, that's why I dig it,
We work together more than not. And that's in the early inceptions of thrash, that's the way it was supposed to be. Everybody tried to work together, and old Exodus and Heathen and Death Angel and stuff. They all, there was that brotherhood.
Totally.
But there's once you get so much of the same thing, it becomes crazy. And up here, we're still in that camaraderie.
Well, we have sort of waves of bands up here, and I think one of the saving graces is that there's not a hell of a lot of bands that come out of our area. I think at one time, I think we had like 12 or maybe 15 active bands that we would put on shows like in the last few years. And like, even just now there's like maybe 5 or 6 bands in the area that are, active and you can really, put on shows and, so on and so forth. They are metal or whatever, but it kind of comes in waves,
It does. It does. Yeah. And, so, I mean, doing shows now, it's obviously, a lot easier with the internet and stuff like that as far as promoting goes. But it's like, back then, I'm sure you guys had to get out there and really aggressively put flyers up on poles and all that.
But I miss that, because the reality is this, like, okay, so we got internet, we have all this technology now, like we even do like live streaming events where you don't even have to go watch the event. You can sit at home and watch it, right? The way that we watch shows is so different now than how we used to participate in them before. Like the promoting, like the flyering, sticking flyers under, windshield wipers and on telephone poles, that was part of the show. Even though it was 3 months ahead of time, it was like that was the buzz that led to the culmination of the show. It was part of it. So like that, so it's different now it's like, we're lucky to get out and hang some flyers on a couple of bulletin boards that probably might get took down. Most of our promotion is like internet stuff and all that kind of stuff, so it's different now, the way that we
Nothing's changed in the way of people taking down flyers, Bryon.
Right.
Well, you've definitely done some amazing stuff, Bryon. With the Redwood Metal Fest and just being able to get Death Angel up here and so forth, and I mean just all the bands you've got up here. It's just pretty incredible, man. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. The thing is like, the reality is when we did Redwood Metal Fest the first time, we got Death Angel, like. In all honesty, that's not the band we were trying to get, like somebody said, hey, what about Death Angel? And I was like, okay, cool. Because honestly, they hadn't really done much for a while. So they were kind of like, I mean, bless their hearts. I mean, they're a great band. I'm a fan. But at that time, it was kind of like we got lucky that they weren't really active and they weren't doing much. So we got them for like a really good deal. And that's honestly the only way that we got Death Angel to play here.
That's awesome.
What was really cool about that, not because of what we did, but because of whatever the times were and whatever's happening with the band at that time. Immediately after that, they went psh, and got huge again, so it was like really cool to be like kind of at the beginning of that and get to be a part of, even just Death Angel history in some way.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, when we did Redwood Metal Fest, like I hadn't really been promoting shows for very long, especially not metal. Cause when I moved back here in like 96 or so, everything was like reggae and, and hip hop and all that kind of stuff. They were doing all the big reggae festivals. So like, that's actually what I started promoting, was reggae shows. Cause that's just what was going on here. I didn't have any metal friends, even though I was a metalhead. I didn't know any metal people because I just wasn't necessarily from here. Right. And I think the first actual like metalhead, if you will, that I met was Adam, honestly, at the 7-Eleven Club. Back when they used to do shows at 7-Eleven. It was like, I want to say like 10 or 11, 12 years ago, maybe. It's been quite a long time. And I walked up to you and I said, are you Adam Weber? And you're like, yeah. And I gave you a Mendo Metalhead shirt. And you were like, sweet.
Those shirts were sick. I remember those.
And like, that was me at that time. That was me just trying to like get into this scene, into this group of people. Cause I knew that there was metal here. I just didn't know anybody in it. And I was like, I asked around and then somebody was like, oh, go talk to Adam Weber. He knows everybody. And I was like, so I seeked you out to find you to be like, let me be in this club. Let me be a part really of all this,
Yeah. That's cool that you did that because in a way, you're like one of the first dudes that like, bringing like Mendo County metal together on this shirt, like, boom, we're all family, like giving these shirts out, like that's really cool.
Got to give credit to Jake King though, because it was me and Jake King that both kind of came up with that concept.
Nice.
Mendo Metalheads was before that. It was called the Brutal 3, and it was me and Jake and another guy, and we were we in all honesty, my venture into booking metal shows didn't come from my first show. I actually went to a show they did at the Tan Oak Park that's up there in Leggett, and it was called Top Fest. And it was this event that was had all these just random bands from Mendocino and Humboldt County, and it just happened to have White Trash Superstars and Shredded Metal on it. And so I went to that event and like, I was like, oh, you guys are so cool, this and that, and because like I didn't know any of the metal scene up here at all. So to see these two metal bands playing with all these other bands, that's who I went to, and we partied all night and drank beer, and they signed my guitar, and and that's nice. Kind of from there, I was like, me and Jake kind of became friends, and I was like, dude, White Trash Superstars, dude, they were a great band, and I would go to all of their shows after that, and me and Jake would hang out a lot at events and things. And somehow me and Jake, in a drunken whatever tryst one night, I guess, if we will, we were like, hey, let's you want to do a metal fest? And I was like, sure, like no clue what that even entailed. And somehow all of this to where we're at now started from that drunk conversation. Somewhere along the way, Jake kind of went about his life, with his job and his family and his life. And I kind of continued on doing all this stuff now, but it all literally started with a drunken conversation of like, you want to do a metal fest? And like, here we are, like, 10 years later, so
that's cool, man.
Beer.
Another funny thing about Jacob King and I is when I lived in LA, probably I was probably 21. So it'd be, early 90s, also somewhere, or late 80s or something like that. But we knew each other back then. We actually caught an arsonist. It's unrelated, but we caught a dude who tried to burn down the hillside, and we got our picture in the paper and all that stuff.
Huh.
And then, 20 years later, he moves up to Willits, of all places, where and he's like, "Hey, you remember me? I'm this guy here," and and I was blown away. Like
that's like cosmic shit, dude.
Yeah.
I was kind of blown away. I was like, and I still have the clipping somewhere of the newspaper. We got thanked by the fire department down there and stuff.
No shit. That's
nice.
cool. Wow.
Nice.
So, our world slowly shrinks.
Well, that's what I like about this is like, we're all kind of sitting here talking about like where we came from, how we got here, and so on and so forth. And like, think even just the four of us sitting here having this discussion, the reality is everybody that's involved in this scene kind of came about it in sort of the same sort of ways. And I think that's why everybody, I think that's why the scene is so tight and the people support the shows so much and stuff, is because I think everybody, for all intents and purposes, has the same kind of viewpoint about like how we're here and why we're here, and like, I appreciate that, because you don't have to fight so hard to see success in it when everybody's like on the same page, and I think that's
Totally.
good for the bands, it's good for the shows, it's good for the promoter, it's good for everything. And that's what I appreciated about it here. I've gone to other areas to promote shows and they've been successful, but it's always a bigger pain in the ass. In all honesty, no offense to anybody anywhere, but there's a difference in the way that they do shows in the Bay Area as opposed to what they do in Humboldt County or what they do in Mendocino County. And this is just a special place. It really is.
Oh yeah. Well, living in the city is definitely a lot different than living in the country out where we're at. And I think it's good that that we're starting episode 1 off like this, just to kind of lay just a general groundwork of kind of what was going on in the area back in the early days, as far as bands and stuff. And this will kind of set the stage to have, future episodes where we have basically, feature a different band per episode, and really give people an inside look at, the bands that make up this scene. And, just like any other scene, all those scenes are kick-ass and they all matter. And so does ours, and this is just our way that we can share our part of the story, and,
well,
so, man, thanks for doing this, guys. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. I think the key to everything is being open and being accepting of other areas and other bands and other musical cultures and just keeping an open mind. I don't think that an elitist type attitude is good for music. You know what I mean? People like what they like and people appreciate what they appreciate, but you can't expand and you can't grow if you don't keep your mind open to new things, and that's what I like a lot around. Down in the cities and stuff, like I said, bless their hearts, it's a great music scene, but there's a lot more of that, pigeonhole attitude than there is up here. There's a lot more open-mindedness up here, and I really do appreciate it,
Totally. Living in the city, you definitely have to survive in what some call a rat race, so when you're when you're in that rat race all the time, it can take a toll on you mentally and how, just how you conduct your everyday self. And living out here, where we're at, I can definitely say from experience that we work on Mendo minutes, It's like
we have our they call it Mendo time.
Yeah, exactly. Mendo time.
It's gonna happen.
I will say this though, and like people have complimented me, and like I don't feel like it's anything that I've done. I just happened to be the guy there wearing the badge when they had to dish out the compliment, so I accept it. But in Mendocino County, it's like the only place where a show happens on time. So like I don't understand like how anywhere else you go, like bands can't get to the stage on time. Everything's always behind schedule, this and that. But for some reason here, everything just happens at the right, everybody's on time and it happens, like there's like this sort of chaotic organization. Everything's chaotically organized, but it all works out and the shows are always great. And
everybody wants to work together here.
It's awesome.
That's super important.
Yeah. So
Totally.
I appreciate it from my perspective. And like I said, and what it is that I do, I mean, people are easy to work with. I mean, every here and there you get an attitude, but nothing so severe that you can't have a good time and enjoy what's happening, so.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, how long we're going to do, each episode, but I'd definitely like to get more into, obviously, Adam, you went down to San Francisco and did the Oxygen thing, and we'll, branch out into that as well. And then, also kind of what was happening here during that time. And when you came back, and moved back out here and the bands that formed from that point onward, we had the, Yield Scabbard, Mummification, Cerebus, Glob, Embryonic Devourment. We got Chained Existence, the Shredded Metal Boys. We got Hunter Peterson's project with Trichomoniasis and Potion, and so many bands. It's awesome.
Yeah. Don't forget Autonomous. Those guys.
Autonomous.
They haven't done a lot lately,
but
I'm waiting for those guys to come back on the scene and do something because, like, I miss their music. I really do miss their music.
I like it. It's death metal without vocals in a way. Prog.
But it takes a serious talent to keep people engaged for a set.
Yes.
With not a single word being sang. You know what I mean? That's fucking talent, dude.
There's something to be said for that. Definitely.
Exactly.
That's pure musicianship right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so we'll get those guys on here too for an episode. They have a lot to do with what's going on out here. And
indeed, Scott. He's got a long history with other bands here in the area too. So I definitely would like to pick into his brain a little bit and see what he's going to say about back in the day.
For sure, yeah, and same with you, Luke. I know you have a lot to talk about. Basically, starting from that point. After Adam went to SF, I believe me and you met, and we started doing our thing, which was Blue Puke, I think, what we were doing, and then all the other crazy shit. So yeah, we'll get into that on episode 2 or a future episode or whatever, but it's super nice talking with you guys.
Hell yeah.
And I'm sure we could talk all day about fucking metal. That's why I think this will be a cool show.
Yeah. I like the idea of this. I like, hell, if it's only just the 4 of us talking to each other, here's an outlet for us to have these conversations. I know my old lady, she don't want to sit and listen to me talking about metal all the time, all day, every day, the same shit over and over and over again. We have a profound appreciation that even if we tell the same stories, we still like reliving them and talking about them. So,
totally.
I'm definitely happy to be a part of this. So I know there's a lot to delve into and a lot of things to say and a lot of questions to ask and be answered. So most definitely.
And Goreskin Coffin too. That's another band we got to get into, coming up here. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon, and been great chatting, and I guess we'll just conclude here.
All right.
Metal.